Welcome back, guys. It's me and Larson again. If you were with us for March Madness, I know you're back. If you saw our March Madness videos, I know you were back. We had some insane picks. We were fading Purdue in round one. I don't know if I was bold enough to actually just pick Fairleigh Dickinson straight up, but we knew Purdue was fraudulent. We had UConn winning the whole thing. I was all over Florida Atlantic. You were all over Michigan State. Creighton was another team. We just had a great March. It was a very. I think I ended up with like 98.7% accuracy on my bracket in terms of just totality. So it was definitely a great March for both of us.
Yeah.
We did well during bowl season. We did well for college football last season, and now we're back with some SEC win total projections. Easily our favorite video segment we do every year is our preseason win totals.
Yeah. Also, I think we missed one big one for college basketball. We had Penn State like 22-1 to win the Big Ten tournament as like a
Oh
10
yeah, I
seed.
forgot
Remember
about that
they
one too.
lost to
Yeah,
Purdue in the championship. That was an easy one. No.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's time for football though. So I don't know how many more times I can keep watching like the compilations or like the seasons revisited, and
Yeah,
just trying to get ready. So I don't know. This is as close as we're gonna get, but I'm
yeah, I
hyped. I'm
agree.
hyped.
I agree. Let's go in order. First team, probably going to be the most controversial one. This is a stay away from me, but it's Alabama. You look at the schedule. It's a tough schedule, and there's some toss-up games in here. So they have LSU and they have at Auburn. Other than that, I think they can handle just about everybody else. The real question is going to be Texas. That Texas game is going to decide this probably. I don't see them just losing one game and it only being Texas. I feel like if they lose to Texas, they're going to drop one to LSU, maybe at Auburn. But this is a stay away from me. This one's going to be close.
Yeah, it helps because I mean the margin here, like it's a 10.5. The juice is heavy to under on most of the places I've looked. It helps that their three hardest games are all at home, but because they've struggled on the road so bad the last few years.
Yeah,
We have no idea what the quarterback situation is, which is kind of important. They seem to have no confidence in any of those guys. Um, Tommy Reese is there, but I don't know. Like, I want to trust Alabama. We'll do the ACC later. I have a team that I'm just trusting because they've been good. This would be one, but it's a total stay away for me because, I mean, everyone it seems like is picking Texas already to beat Alabama. Is anybody picking Alabama who's favored by a touchdown at home?
now, see, this is where it's starting to make me nervous because now I'm thinking now that this Texas trend has become the Texas pick has become way too trendy, and
Right,
that's making me
exactly.
nervous thinking that now it's a rat pick, and I think that's just going to have to be like a game time decision on that because I'm going to have to see what the public is because this is starting to get way too trendy. A couple months ago, it was
Yeah.
fun to be like, oh, Texas is gonna beat Alabama, and then it's becoming a little too popular of a pick to me. But I think they need to worry about at Auburn. And you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about. Actually, no, we'll get to Auburn in a second. Arkansas. Arkansas is another team. There's a lot of these SEC West teams that are kind of hanging around 7 wins, 8 wins. Arkansas is another one. I
Yeah.
think Arkansas is a tricky one because they have a lot of losable games and they have a lot of winnable games. Interestingly enough, we talked about this. They played BYU this year, kind of randomly.
Yeah.
But other than that,
Again.
typical SEC West slate. They got Missouri, LSU at Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Florida. It's not an easy schedule.
No, and like you said, there's a lot of teams in the SEC sitting in like the 6.5, 7.5 range. They are one. Um, the more I read into this, they've been tough to trust the last few years. They're always good to lose a game that they should be winning. Um, they're going to get lucky here with a pretty easy non-conference because BYU should not be that good going up to the Big 12. That should be a win for Arkansas, especially being at home, right?
Yeah,
Um, but the more I looked into it, I think I actually like the over. So I went ahead and put a little bit on over 6.5. It was like minus 130. Only because they should be 4-0 after their non-conference games. They're at LSU and they're at Alabama, so we'll chalk those up as a loss, right? But take the other 6 SEC games that they play. So it's neutral versus A&M, at Ole Miss. They get Mississippi State at home, at Florida, and then Auburn and Missouri. That is not too daunting, and you just need them to go 3-3 to get to 7-5. They're a field goal underdog against Texas A&M, but they're always a field goal underdog against Texas A&M, and we've seen them come out on top in that one. Um, Ole Miss we'll get to later. I'm not as high on. You get Mississippi State as home. Florida and Auburn are both in down years. Um, there's a chance they could really run through those 6 games, come out pretty well. I would say there's a better chance that they maybe win 8 games. I hesitate to say 9 games, but they can go 8-4. I think more likely than they go 6-6. So
Yeah.
I'll take the over. We talked last year. It's just another season of the KJ Jefferson hype train.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to call him the best quarterback in the SEC like some of the magazines are and all that.
No.
He's a very good quarterback, and Rocket Sanders is back at running back. He's a very good running back. They lost, some of their wide receivers, but they're returning guys on the offensive line. The defense should be a lot better. Our guy, Jaheim Singletary from Georgia, had a lot of promise. He's there now. Should get some PT. So I think they will be pretty solid on both sides of the ball. And, this is a team last year that LSU, Texas A&M, and Missouri, they lost by a combined 7 points. So they're in these games. I'm going to take kind of a leap of faith and trust them to win some of those games they've lost in the past. This is kind of a big year for Pittman. They got to get it done. But I think they can do 6.5. And there's even like a DraftKings of 7 at plus 125, which I like because you can push it if they go 7-5. So give me the over. They're a sneaky over for Arkansas.
Yeah, there's another team on here. We've really not had to talk about much in years past, but I'm kind of high on Missouri this year. I think Missouri is going to have a decent squad. We will get to them.
Interesting. Okay.
But the other team that I said we would get to first is Auburn. Yeah. Auburn. I took the cheese last year. I took Auburn over 6.5 because I said, when everybody's down on Auburn, that's when they do their best work. Yeah. And after the Penn State game, I knew that bet was done for. But guess what? I'm doing it again. I'm taking the cheese again. I'm taking Hugh Freeze. I'm taking Auburn to go over 6.5 wins. I think they're going to be much improved this year. They still have a good roster. They always have a decent roster, at least. Quarterback is obviously going to be a huge question mark. I don't know if Peyton Thorne's going to start or Robbie Ashford, which one. But I think it's safe to say that
I can't imagine Ashford starts really.
No,
because if they bring Thorne in, they're not bringing Thorne in for a competition. You're coming to start. Yeah, we're gonna have
they've done enough in the portal. I think Auburn's going to be good. I think they're good for 7 wins. Their schedule, they get UMass, they get at Cal, awful. They get Samford, and then they get Vanderbilt and New Mexico State. There's 5.
Right. Yeah, I think the non-conference here is pretty easy. At Cal is a very random game. They should win, but just what a weird game to have that on ESPN.
Weird game.
Yeah, that'll be weird. So we have kind of differing bets, but they both can win. I stayed away from the 6.5. Because Auburn, they're ghosts there. I don't want to touch anything with Auburn. I did go on DraftKings though, and their conference win total was at 3.5. The under was pretty juiced, minus 190, but I went ahead and laid it. So there's a world where they win, their 4 non-conference games and then 3 SEC games, and you're at 7. So you go over 6.5. They're not going to beat Georgia. I don't think they're going to beat LSU in Death Valley. I'll say they're not going to beat Alabama for now. Obviously, that's is what it is.
Change.
Right, that's 3 losses. Vanderbilt's one they can win, but they're going to go to Arkansas, which could be tough. They're at Texas A&M, the Mississippi schools. I just think between those, what is that? 5 or 6 games. They have to win 4 and 2. I don't want to trust it just because they lost a lot. That offense last year was awful. So Thorne's going to have to come in and change around a passing offense that was not very good last year. They're good at running back, but Hugh Freeze went in and attacked the portal, man. And obviously they're recruiting well for next year. Everyone's talking about that. Look out for Auburn next year. That's next year. I'm not really going to worry about them this year. So there is a world where they can win 7 games. I would be very, very surprised if there's a world where they win 4 SEC games. I just don't think that could happen. So I ended up laying the juice with that one.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and it's just so tempting to me because I keep falling into that trap to where it's everybody's asleep on Auburn. I said it last year, and it is a dumb bet, but it's one too. You look at Mississippi State, you look at Ole Miss. I think both of those are top toss-ups. They win the rest of their home games, let's say, and they do get both of the Mississippi teams at home.
Right,
and then you gotta get one upset, and I think Auburn can get one upset, but I guess we'll see.
We'll see how the transfers do.
Yeah, seriously. This is another one of the more interesting ones on this list is Florida. So I've said this multiple times, and I'm going to keep saying it. I'll know everything I need to know about Florida after week one. When they play Utah, especially if Utah does not have Cam Rising, I think I'll know everything I need to know about Florida by then. The absolute cakewalk out of conference schedule, not including Florida State. They get McNeese State, Charlotte. I don't see the other one. I think it's just those two. And then you get your classic Garden Variety, SEC East teams. You get Kentucky, Vandy, Missouri at home. You get Arkansas at home. But man, Tennessee at South Carolina, Georgia and Jacksonville, at LSU, Florida State, and at Utah. That is brutal.
Yeah, and not to mention they went and got Graham Mertz from the portal. I don't ever remember saying like Graham Mertz, this guy's got it. That's going to be
except for that one game, that first game.
Except for well, and now he's is he really an SEC quarterback? Graham Mertz? I don't know. They're going to give him two between Utah and then McNeese State in week 2. They're going to give you 2 weeks to get ready for Tennessee, where it feels like we'll know what is Graham Mertz going to be about. He won't have a lot of guys to throw to. Ricky Pearsall's back, who was really good last year, but it's a pretty thin and young wide receiver group they've got, and they lost 4 offensive linemen to the portal. It feels like there's kind of Band-Aids all over the offense. They're at Kentucky. I like Kentucky this year. I don't think Florida's going to Kentucky and winning. They're going to play.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they play Arkansas. Granted, they have a bye before Georgia, the way Georgia, Florida do their byes. But Florida plays Arkansas, South Carolina, and Georgia, all off byes, which isn't nothing, especially when I think Arkansas. We think Arkansas could be pretty decent. But after their bye week, Georgia, Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, and Florida State. Ouch. So get your wins. They're at 5.5. Get your wins before the bye, I would say. You'll probably get, if we're being generous, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Charlotte, and McNeese. There's 4. Utah and Tennessee will be the ones, but the Utah game is freaky because when that line came out, whenever it was 2 months ago, we were all like, why is that only 8.5? Obviously, Rising's not playing, but still is a little sus. So, get the wins before the bye at 5.5. I've got nothing for him, though.
I don't either, because there's just a couple games where I want Florida. I kind of want them against Utah. I think they can beat Utah. I think they can beat Tennessee, too, to be honest with you. And it's just South Carolina, I'm not fully sold on them. Once again, we'll get to them. And then Missouri, the team that I am sold on, but am I right about being sold on? There's just so many question marks here. Florida's a stay away. I just don't love the number. If this was 5 flat, I would be really comfortable taking it. But
very different.
6 is a lot, and not 6 feels a little foolish just because they still have a ton of talent. It's almost the same situation as Auburn, except not. But you get what I'm saying. So Florida will be an interesting one. All right, let's talk about Georgia. We'll make this quick. Over 11.5. I'm not taking the under. I'm not taking the over either. But let's be real here for a second. The schedule's awful. Even if they were still playing at Oklahoma, I still think this is probably an 11.5 line. Maybe it goes to 10.5. But even then, I can't bet on them to go undefeated because that would be 27, 29 games in a row, which is just ridiculous. But hey, proud of the boys. Proud of the boys. That's all I got to say about them.
Yeah, it's an absolute stay away for me. We already have enough invested, in this team to win some games. Everyone's going to talk about how bad the schedule is. It is what it is. The Oklahoma thing happened. Not really many tests. I guess at Auburn, you at least got to go out there and put on a game face for Auburn. I like Kentucky again, which is in Athens, thankfully.
But Kentucky's not really just Georgia, except not as good. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You're playing our game, except not as well.
And Kentucky's still a team I think is probably second in the East. You're there with Tennessee, so we're at least working for it. Obviously, the big circled game will be in Neyland, second to last week of the season. I hate we have to wait that long, at least for what a game that looks like will be challenging. I don't know. Kirby, all he talks about
now. He's never
now.
had a problem in Neyland. He's
never had a problem in Neyland, and all he talks about is we're not going to be complacent. We've got guys fighting for everything that they can get. So this is going to be a test. Make sure the guys are not complacent. You're going for kind of a historical 3-season run here. So just get your work done. Guys should fight. You're going to get plus money for 11.5 is pretty nice. I imagine that comes down to just the Tennessee game. So you're almost in a way getting Georgia plus money on the money line. Tennessee is kind of a way to think about it. Stay away for 11.5. We'll see what happens.
That's just so weird. I will say I'll be here all season. I live here, but I'm having a bunch of friends in town for Ole Miss. I don't know how competitive that game will be, but I think that'll be an interesting game. We don't get to see a lot. We haven't seen UGA Ole Miss, and Hughes Freeze ran Kirby out of town. I think in his first season. It's always good to see all my friends from Ole Miss. Okay. Up next, we got Kentucky at 6.5. Me and you both like this one. I like Kentucky over 6.5. Even though they play one of our darlings, Louisville, who we'll get to later. But, they get Ball State, which, God, poor Ball State. They get Kentucky and Georgia. And I'm sure they have some other tough
Brutal.
ones. But they get Eastern Kentucky, Akron. There's 3. You get Tennessee at home. You get Missouri and Vanderbilt at home. And you get Louisville at home. And then, you look at that right there. That's 7. And if you can get all of those, like I said, that's not a guarantee, especially with Tennessee and Missouri. But, you get Florida at home. You go to Georgia, you go to Mississippi State, which is a winnable game. You get Alabama at home, and you get South Carolina at home. I think they have one of the more favorable schedules in the conference. And I love Devin Leary. If you remember, if you watched this last year, I was all over Devin Leary for a Heisman run. And he was having a decent season before he got hurt. But I don't think Kentucky's going to have a bad season at all. I could see him winning 10 games. 9's probably a little more realistic for them. But I think they'll blow by 6.5. I think this number is way too low.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I projected them at 8-4, and with the best case probably being 9-3. We have to start, of course, with Leary because Leary was our guy last year who, like you said, was having a great year until he got hurt, ruined all of our North Carolina State bets. But we're getting a little bit of a discount on this number to be 6.5 because of Levis leaving, and everything you read is, Kentucky's got to replace Levis now, and what's going to happen at the quarterback position. I was never just that high on Levis, and I think Leary can be every bit as good and productive, if not better. I have a lot of respect for Leary. I think he's great, and I would take him over KJ Jefferson if we're going to go back to the quarterback thing. Love Devin Leary. They get their old offense coordinator back, Liam Cohen, who when Kentucky was really competing in the East a few years ago, he was kind of at the heart of that. Ray Davis, running back from Vanderbilt, who was pretty good. He's going to come in and replace Chris Rodriguez. I like that. He's got a lot of weapons to throw to. Barryon Brown, Tavion Robinson are good athletic receivers. The offense should be pretty nice, especially considering the offensive line was the worst part last year, and they've got that completely rebuilt, improved, should be a lot better. The offense is going to be good, and Stoops is a defensive coach. 4 of the last 5 years, they've had a top 25 defense. They're just really solid on both sides of the ball. 6.5 is a great number. Like you said, look at them before the bye
Very
week.
favorable schedule, yeah.
Very fair. I think they go to the bye week 6-1 probably, with maybe the losses at Georgia. You could beat Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri. It's a cakewalk first 5 weeks really until you get to Athens. So there's a world where you're 6-1 at the bye and you need one more win. At South Carolina, it could be challenging. At Louisville, I like Louisville a lot this year. I think that'll be a great game. But they can beat Tennessee, Mississippi State. Alabama comes to Lexington. If Alabama's not anything what we think they could be, that could be interesting. I'm just really high on the Cats. And, you look at some of their losses last year. They had 4, I'm trying to find them. They had 4 really explainable losses last year. They lost at Ole Miss by 3 because Levis fumbled at the end. They lose at South Carolina because Levis was hurt. They lose to Vanderbilt. And they gave Georgia a game that was freezing cold, but it was close and was still competitive. I just like the schedule makeup and the makeup of the team. I think Stoops is really good, and he gets his guys ready to play. I really like the over 6.5. It's one of my favorites.
I think 6.5 total is really good value. Even at 7, I think at 7 you're looking at a push.
I was going to say the 7. I would bet the 7 even more. I think that with the push, the possibility of the push helps that so much. Big on the Cats for sure.
Yeah. And this is one team last year that I am going to pat myself on the back for. I feel like I was the only person that believed in LSU last year. I know you also you were also pretty high on them as well. But I just thought LSU was getting way too much. I think they were 6.5 last year.
That's right.
Absolutely way too low for them. And of course, they end up winning the SEC West and playing Georgia in the SEC championship. Now they're back up to 9.5. And here's the thing. They're another team with a schedule that I look at and I'm like, oh, Wow. Yeah. You get Grambling. You go to Mississippi State. You get Arkansas at Ole Miss, which Ole Miss is not a very intimidating place to play. Their fans will tell you that. At Missouri, you get Auburn at home. You get Army. You go to Tuscaloosa, Florida, Georgia State, Texas A&M, and Florida State to open the year. And if they beat Florida State to open the year, I think this is a guarantee.
I think that's pretty well off. Yeah. You look at the schedule and you're kind of like, they're going to have to play the Auburn, Auburn and Florida are both in Baton Rouge. Texas A&M actually is also in Baton Rouge. And you look at some of those spreads, like they're minus 16.5 projected against Auburn and Florida. So those shouldn't be tough. What are the tough games? Florida State's going to be tough. At Mississippi State was a game we kind of got screwed in last year because we liked Mississippi State in Death Valley. We'll see if Mississippi State can piece together early in the year for that one. Arkansas and Alabama, are the usual suspects. The only thing I would worry about schedule-wise is that 3 of their 4 hardest games are away from home. You're at Alabama. You play Florida State, neutral site, but that's not too big of a worry. I ultimately stayed away. I think this is a perfect number because it feels like a 9-3, 10-2 team possibly. So perfect number at 9.5. But Jaden Daniels, for my money, is one of the best 1 or 2 quarterbacks in the SEC. They got to find a little bit of consistency at running back because he was actually their leading rusher last year. But they returned all 5 offensive linemen. They're going to bring that entire unit back. So running the ball should be no problem. Malik Neighbors is there. Brian Thomas is there. You can throw the ball to. The offense will be fine. Harold Perkins was, electric. He's going to be a star. So I have no problem with the defense. And then it was Mason Smith they lost last year in the first game, right? The defensive lineman. He's back. There's a lot of hype around him. So the defense will be nice, and I think that's really where it will come down to, because if they can improve on that side of the ball, this is a playoff-worthy team for sure. So they are 3rd in the SEC plus 450 for odds. So they're still putting Bama over them, but I think this is a team that on its day can be just as good.
Yeah, I agree. Here's one of my big bets from this offseason. First of all, I hate to have to analyze it like this. RIP Mike Leach, 100%. But Mississippi State under 6.5 wins is one of my favorite picks. So at home, they get Southeastern Louisiana, Arizona, Western Michigan, Kentucky, Southern Miss, LSU, and Alabama, and Ole Miss. I think those are the home games. Yeah. You look at those 3. They got 3 layups. You got Southeastern Louisiana, Arizona, which I think did Arizona beat them like 2 years ago. I can't remember. I do remember betting on that game and I lost. I don't remember who I bet on, but that one was in Arizona. And then Western Michigan, Southern Miss is frisky. It's hard to call that a guarantee win, but I think they can win all 3 of those. I don't think Kentucky at home is a guarantee by a long shot. No. You talk about LSU at South Carolina, Alabama at Arkansas, at Auburn, at Texas A&M, and then Ole Miss. I don't see 7 wins there. I don't see 7 wins.
Yeah, it's juiced pretty heavily to the under on most of the places I was looking. The Mike Leach thing obviously is interesting. How do they kind of come back from that? They upgraded their defensive coordinator to head coach. They brought in a new offensive coordinator who's kind of going to go for more balanced look. So it's not going to be as air raid as we usually have seen Mississippi State be. But they still have Will Rogers, who's a guy I really like, who's very talented. He's got a good running back behind him. He's got receivers to throw the ball to. And the offensive line, a super experienced veteran group that has been there. I'm not really going to worry about the offense too much. I think there won't be a huge drop-off. The defense will be important. Linebackers, defensive lines are all pretty good. It actually has a chance to be a pretty decent defense, like with a lot of experienced guys that I think could surprise some people. The fate's just going to be, for this team, going to be how does the offense transition? And they got a lot of returning talent, so it makes me think they can do that. I don't have a pick for it, an over-under. But, at Arkansas will be tough. At Texas A&M will be tough. Then you get your Alabama and LSU. I am not too worried about Ole Miss at the end of the season. I think we'll get to Ole Miss in a second. I think Mississippi State can handle them. I like the spots they play some of these teams. So Kentucky in a 3-week stretch, Tennessee at Mississippi State, and then Alabama. You've got to think there's a little come off Tennessee.
Definitely a letdown spot. Mm-hmm.
And then Carolina's at Georgia, home to Mississippi State, and then at Tennessee. kind of a same type of deal. And their three easiest SEC games, right, are all on the road. Which, if you're going to have the road SEC games, those are the ones you want. With being at Auburn and at South Carolina.
Easiest is very subjective there though, because they do have a gauntlet.
Yeah, it is. The everything around it is tough. This is one I would use if this is at 6, I would take the over because this feels like a 6-win team, or at least maybe they're 6-5 going to Ole Miss the last week. It's one of those. So I don't have an opinion on it, but I think they could be close, and I think they could surprise some people because someone in the West has to lose games. Someone's got to lose these games. I don't know if it'll be Mississippi State, but I'm pretty neutral.
Yeah. I've seen them become a trendy pick too, which makes me nervous in a way because I'm seeing a lot of, well-respected people be like, no, everybody's overreacting to the Mississippi State thing. But I'd look at the schedule and I just, that's a brutal stretch. But, the unfortunate thing would be really if they drop a game to Arizona, it's over.
That's where you got to win. You got to win the 4 non-conference games, and you got to beat Ole Miss or South Carolina. It is funny though, looking at the SEC, the conference odds. Ole Miss is plus 4,500, and Auburn is plus 8,000. Mississippi State is plus 12,000. I'm not saying Mississippi State's going to win the conference, obviously. I just don't see why they're that far behind Ole Miss and Auburn. I think if anything, Mississippi State's better than them. So the defense it'll come down to the defense. I personally like what the defense has. That'll be the kind of the kicker for how well they do. Stay away. They feel 6-6-ish to me.
Yeah, I definitely understand. All right, let's talk about one of my darlings. I don't know why.
I want to hear what you like here. I want to see. This is interesting.
I don't know why I have this affection towards them, but it is Missouri. Let's start with the obvious. They lost Dominic Lovett to Georgia.
Welcome.
But I look at this schedule and I see a couple of spots, and I don't know if this is biased just from, whenever they, came to, or Georgia went to Columbia and they gave us all we wanted in that game pretty much.
Yeah.
But, okay, when you break down the schedule, they got South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, and Memphis, which is not a super easy out-of-conference schedule, by the way. And not to mention Kansas State. I forgot they have Kansas State this year as well. But they do get them at home. They go to Vanderbilt. They get South Carolina at home. They get LSU at home. They go to Kentucky, to Georgia. They get Tennessee at home, Florida at home, and Arkansas at home. So they have a lot of favorable home games for the most part. My thing is, okay, let's say you beat South Dakota, you beat Middle Tennessee State, you beat Memphis, you beat Vanderbilt, you beat South Carolina. There's 5. And those are some of their earlier games in the season. I think South Carolina's a little later down the line, but Kansas State, LSU, at Kentucky, at Georgia, you could probably take Georgia and LSU off there. Tennessee, Florida, and Arkansas, they could win one of those. I think that's very achievable, or 2 of those, excuse me.
Yeah, Florida and Arkansas are kind of the swing games there. They always the Missouri-Arkansas game is always close. So that one, and they could beat Florida at home. 3 of their 4 hardest games are at home. LSU's got to come there. Tennessee's got to go there. I actually bet Memphis over. I think Memphis will be pretty good. That's a game that when I first kind of drew this up, I put as a loss for Missouri.
Now, I do want to say, by the way, I have not taken this. I just think that Missouri is going to be decent this year. I'm kind of high on Missouri. I have not taken them over 6.5, but I'm just saying there's definitely a path. And if they're better than a lot of people expect, I'm not going to be super surprised.
Well, Tennessee goes to Columbia before the Georgia game. Could be a sneaky spot where they can at least keep that close. It's kind of a make or break year for Drinkwitz. It kind of feels like things are heating up for him. They have some quarterback kind of issues. They got in Jake Garcia came from Miami, Brady Cook, who was there last year, and then Sam Horn, who was supposed to be a pretty good recruit. I thought he was going to get some time. They don't really know which one of the 3 will start. The best offensive game plan is probably just give Luther Burden the ball and get the hell out of the way. But overall, the skill positions, they're pretty good. They replace Lovett pretty well with wide receiver. They're loaded with seniors on the offensive line. And the defense last year made a really big improvement. That was the one thing, at the Georgia-Missouri game, which I was unfortunately at, which was scary, was how good their defense was. And the defense was good for really the whole season. They improved in huge numbers from the season before. And they returned a lot of starters and guys who can make an all-SEC team. So they have a chance to be a top SEC defense. If they can get that nailed down and have a defense similar to last year, then they can definitely kind of scare some people. I mean, like Tennessee going there before the Georgia game could
They can
be
hug up a game.
frisky.
Is the thing.
Right, and they can hang around. They lost 4 games last year by double digits. I mean, this is a team that can hang around in games. So, and they've got their kicker, Mevis, who just doesn't miss. I felt like he was hitting those 60 yarders against Georgia last year. Drinkwitz, though, the last 4 regular seasons for Missouri, the last 4 regular seasons, 6-6, 5-5, 6-6, 6-6. So they are right in the middle, and they had close losses last year. They also had close wins. They didn't really have a very convincing SEC win last year. They were all close.
What was the disgusting one that we bet on in that nasty underdog parlay? I think it was South Carolina. Maybe
we had. I think it was South Carolina. That's probably was it. Yeah, where we just kind of pulled that out of nowhere, and they came through. But even like they almost lost to Vanderbilt last year too.
Yeah.
Like
they're
whooped by
Tennessee.
Right, they're so all over the place. 6.5. It feels like a very good number. So, it's a stay away from me. I really don't want to put any money towards them.
Yeah, I just wanted to show them a little love. I don't think I'm actually going to take 6.5, but Missouri is one of those teams where this is either going to be a year where they're either going to go 6-6 and Eli Drinkwitz is going to get fired, or they're actually going to take a step and could be like 8-4. And it's like, okay, are we going to have to consider Missouri in the future?
What if they're 5-0 going to LSU or playing LSU?
It's possible.
It's not out of the realm of possibility at all.
Also, by the way, Eli Drinkwitz, his name's not Elijah, it's Elia, which I think is weird.
Elia, that's a good point. That's a good point. I knew
that's kind of a red flag. All right, okay. Well, this is someone I know. This is a group I know you want to talk about. It's Ole Miss, and before you get started, I just want to say the fact that Ole Miss goes to Tulane is kind of nutty, but
and a fun game too. A game that kind of headlines week 2. Yeah, this was an under for me at 7.5. The favored odds are to the over, so I actually got plus money on this. They did kind of this QB carousel thing, right, where they have Jackson Dart. They went and got Spencer Sanders, who was really good last year when he was healthy at Oklahoma State. That was confusing. And then Walker Howard, who I guess is kind of the heir apparent. And I don't think we know who's starting at quarterback in that group. It's probably Dart or Sanders. Quinshon Judkins is back. He was great last year as a freshman running back. He's going to be a stud. They have to replace their 2 wide receivers, which should be fine. They've got a lot of experience and guys on the offensive line that should be good. The offense is going to be fine. I really don't have any questions with the offense. It's with the defense, though, that raises concerns for me because they lose their top tackler. They lose their sack leader. They return guys who are good in the secondary, but there's a lot of questions like defensive line and linebacker areas. They also got Pete Golding from Alabama as the DC, which is kind of interesting. But it's a defense that has a lot of holes, and we have seen Ole Miss in the past, especially these Lane Kiffin type of teams that just score a lot of points, and the defense is on the field for a short time, giving up points, and it's a very offensive battle. This feels like a very one-sided team to me. And so I look at the schedule. 3 of their 4 hardest games are on the road. I mean, they're going to at Tulane, they're at Alabama, they're at Georgia, they're at Mississippi State. I don't like the schedule before the bye because you're getting Arkansas, LSU, Alabama, and Tulane all before you get kind of a rest period. They could be 2-4 in that stretch. There's a lot of losable games, and you look at the teams they play, right? Who are the teams that are going to be able to move the ball on them? Tulane can move the ball on Ole Miss's defense. Absolutely. Alabama probably will. LSU and Arkansas can. I think Georgia can. If A&M and Bobby Petrino get right, they can move the ball. Mississippi State can move the ball. They play all these teams that I think offensively will have success against them. And will they be able to score points to keep up with it? Maybe they do. But I don't like
the makeup. Quinshon Judkins, who was insane.
I just came away from this whole thing thinking like it feels like 2 completely different sides of the ball. And 7.5, like I said, someone's got to lose games in the West. I think Arkansas could be pretty decent. I think Mississippi State could be pretty decent. It's looking like it's going to be Ole Miss to me. So I went under. And plus, if they go 7-5, that's decent for Ole Miss, and that's still an under. So give me the under 7.5.
I'm not taking them at set. Like I wouldn't take them at 7, but with the hook, like eight games.
The hook matters big time. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially this Tulane game is not what they thought this was going to be probably about a year ago.
Right. When they get you right. I mean, you're getting Tulane that's like the favorite to be back in a New Year's Bowl from the Group of 5. That place is going to be crazy. Week 2.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, New
I
Orleans,
do want
have
to.
fun.
I do want to get to A&M at some point. Obviously, just I'm very conflicted on them. But let's get to South Carolina because I think South Carolina is one of the more interesting teams on here. I did not drink the South Carolina Kool-Aid last year, and had it not been, which I'm very glad they won both of these games. I hate South Carolina, and don't get me wrong, they beat Tennessee, they walloped Tennessee, and then they go out and beat Clemson just completely out of nowhere. That was very unexpected. But I don't know if they're going to have such luck this year. And they're projected at 6 wins, which they were the most heavily bet team in Vegas last year for their win total to go over. And like I said, They got that. That was a miracle that they got there. But you look at this schedule, North Carolina, then they get Furman, but they have Mississippi State at home, Florida at home, Jacksonville State at home, Vanderbilt at home, Kentucky at home. So not a bad home slate. But they go to Georgia, they go to Tennessee, they go to Missouri. They have Clemson at home too, I believe, actually. And to Texas A&M, like that seems like they can win 6 games. But I look at this and I see that number at 6, and I look at this schedule and I say, what am I not seeing here? Because there's just something that's got to be off with this group.
Yeah, the thing that scares me with them is before the bye, they have a pretty early bye, but 3 games away from home before your bye at Tennessee, at Georgia, and then North Carolina is a neutral site game.
That's Charlotte, I believe, is it not?
Yeah, and they'll beat Furman in week 2 at home, of course. And they get Mississippi State at home, who I like. What if they're 1-4 going to the bye? I think that screws everything up. At Missouri, at Texas A&M are tough. The good news is they don't leave home for the entire month of December. 4 straight games. Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Clemson are in that stretch. So that's nice. 3 of your 4 hardest games are on the road. I don't like that. I think they thrive off their home crowd pretty well. I'm not a huge Spencer Rattler fan. What type of Spencer Rattler are you getting? Because we saw for 2 years he was awful, and then the last few games last year he came on and was actually really good. He was huge for them beating Tennessee and Clemson, obviously. But there's a lot of questions with skill positions. Juice Wells is back, who's kind of his main target, a receiver, which is nice. But you lose your best running back. They had to bring in a tight end from Arkansas, Trey Knox, who's actually pretty good.
Stockton went to Florida State, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's questions on offense for me there. The bright spot of their defense is their secondary, which I guess is helpful. But last year they were terrible against the run. I mean, anyone could run on them, and they forced a lot of turnovers. But now you have a defensive line that returns 1 guy, and it's kind of just up in the air. So I don't know. They're the big question mark.
Team to me. They feel like
they're a 6-6 team. I think it's another great number for them to be at 6.5. They're kind of the big coin flip team because as I'm doing all the other schedules, you're kind of like, you just circle the South Carolina game and it's like, who's going to win that? That's going to decide a lot. So
I'm not getting the hook on that though. I just got 6, and I can see them losing to North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, Clemson, and then either A&M or Kentucky. And you can swap. And then there's Florida. Like Florida could maybe get them. Mississippi State can maybe get it. There's just too many question marks for me to lay anything on them. I'm staying away from this. But if you made me, I would probably take the under. But I'm not picking this one.
Yeah, they've lost 4 straight games to Missouri, and they're 1-8 versus Texas A&M. So
there you go.
Let's just see what history has to say about that. But yeah, it's a huge stay away for me for sure.
Yeah. Here's one of the more interesting ones. Tennessee at 9.5 wins. So let's take a look at their schedule. Virginia should be an easy win. Austin Peay should be an easy win. By the way, this is a team that constantly complains about Georgia's schedule. UTSA,
seriously.
Frisky, by the way. UTSA, Frisky.
Yes.
And then UConn, also Frisky. Congrats to UConn, by the way. I'm glad they're finally showing a little life with their football program.
Yes.
And then, you got some pretty favorable, you got the games at home. You won at home. You got Texas A&M at home. You got South Carolina at home. You got Georgia at home. Vandy at home, I guess. But you go to Florida, you go to Missouri, you go to Alabama, and you go to Kentucky. This feels like a 9-win team is the thing for me. I can see them losing, at Kentucky or at Florida. Maybe like A&M or something if A&M's who we think they are. And then at Alabama and Georgia. And, that's 3 losses, maybe 4. 9.5. If you made me take one, I'm going to take the under, but they feel like a 9-3 team to me.
Yeah, that good point about what are the games you're going to lose here. I mean, Texas A&M at Alabama and at Kentucky in a 3-week stretch. is tough. I feel like they could lose 2 of those. And then you get, Georgia. Let's see how frisky Missouri is when they have to go there. I'll also say this too, to go back, UTSA, we like a lot. I like them a lot. Go ahead and give me the points with UTSA in that game in week 4. So Joe Milton, a lot of hype around him. I don't know how good he's going to be. I'm not saying he's not going to be good. It's just how good will he be, because that'll dictate a lot. Their wide receivers are back, which will be nice. Keaton and Brew McCoy and all that. They should be fine passing the ball. They went to the portal to help out their O-line, so they should be fine. It's just going to be the defense, and specifically the pass defense, because that was what everybody used to kind of torch them last year. That was their one weakness. So if they can improve in the pass D, and they can kind of identify new pass rushers, because they lost Byron Young, who was actually really good last year for them on the line, that'll be the big part. But it was funny to read kind of some anonymous SEC coaches talk about them, and they all said the same thing, which was like that scheme that they run, that offense they run, is hard to prepare for in 1 week. We saw Kirby kind of hinted at it last year, was like, we were preparing for Tennessee for weeks coming up. So that'll be important. I think that the A&M stretch, Alabama, Kentucky, those 3 games are going to be huge. 9.5 feels very right. So it feels like you said, a 9-3 team. It's a stay away for me for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then here we go. This is probably the biggest question mark. It's Texas 8-4 and Texas A&M. The biggest question mark in the entire SEC. They have the potential to really be the one to mess this whole thing up, to really actually finally kick down the door. And it's going to be Bobby Petrino is the thing. Is Bobby Petrino going to come in here and is he going to get this offense moving? I've said that I'm not buying into A&M until Jimbo gives up the play sheet. And guess what? He's finally given up the play sheet.
Here we are.
Now I got to talk about him. So they have some decent home games. They have a pretty favorable home stretch. You get New Mexico, UL Monroe, Abilene Christian. There's 3 wins. You get Auburn at home. You get Mississippi State at home. You get Arkansas at home. You get Alabama at home. You get South Carolina at home. But they go to Miami. They go to Tennessee. They go to Ole Miss, and they go to LSU. So it kind of sounds like they might go 8-4. But I think they're going to beat Miami. I think Miami's a game that they can win. So, if you take this game by game, those first 3 that I listed off, I think they can beat Mississippi State. I don't know, 8-5, 8.5 wins is going to be tough. It's still going to be a quarterback thing. Is Connor Weigman, Mac Johnson, either of these guys actually going to do something? Like that's kind of just what it boils down to.
So, are you seeing 8.5 or 7.5?
I'm seeing 8.5. Do you see 7.5?
I had 7.5. I wrote this down like a week ago, and I saw some 7.5s. DraftKings had an 8.
I see 8. I see 8 at -150. Let's go with 8. Yeah. Let's meet at the middle at 8 because they are.
So, boy, that seems another great number. If they win every game they're favored in, right, which is just 8, then you're 8-4. That's obviously not taking into account an upset or playing in Arkansas where you're -4, where that could go either way. So I saw that and I was like, lean to the under. Because Arkansas and Mississippi State are kind of the hinge games there. I think you got to take care of those. But like you said, it's if they can hit it big, if they get this right with Petrino, like they can win 10 games. So I don't know what really we're expecting. They lost 5 games last year by 6 points or less. So everyone remembers how bad they kind of were and how much fun it was to make fun of Texas A&M. They still hung around in games. I don't like a 3-week stretch where it's Arkansas and Dallas and then Alabama and then at Tennessee. That will be tough. Miami, you throw it up in the air. You're favored by a touchdown there, but those are 2 teams that are both kind of similar to me. The quarterback play last year was super sketchy and super questionable. So if he can come in this year, Weigman, and be good, then that's obviously a huge plus. You've got a nice Smith and Evan Stewart back. I think Petrino could have a field day with them. That'll be fun to see. But they only averaged 22 points per game last year on offense. Like I forgot how just boring and abysmal and slow it was. So the offense has got to get right. You've got a ton of talent. I mean, the defense has a ton of 5 stars, defensive line and linebacker, all that. They've got so much talent. So if they can just get the 5 stars to get right and the offense can score more than 22 points per game, you're headed in the right direction. It's a number I want no part of though, because the floor and the ceiling for them are completely different things.
100%. This is one where you
Nothing.
have to really have a strong opinion. This is not even like a
Yes.
numbers thing. This is just I don't
Yes.
know, but I think A&M is going to be good, or I think A&M is going to be trash, and that's the only way you're going to take this one. Really, this is not a numbers game.
Yes.
This is a gut emotional game. And then finally, let's finish with my favorite bet every year: Vanderbilt over 3.5 wins. Lock it in every single year. You want to talk about a thrill? So
Yeah.
let's talk about Vanderbilt real quick. So they play 4 out of conference games. They play Hawaii. They play Alabama A&M. They go to UNLV, by the way. That's going to be so weird, by the way, watching Vanderbilt at
That's
Allegiant
kind of
Stadium.
yeah.
And then they go
Yeah,
to
that's
Wake
right.
Forest. And we'll talk about the ACC after this. Y'all check that out, too. They'll probably be up about the same time. We'll get to the ACC. But then, of course, you got Kentucky, Missouri, both at home, at Florida, Georgia at home, at Ole Miss, Auburn at home, at South Carolina, at Tennessee. You just got to have one of those. Come on. Like those first three I listed, the Hawaii, Alabama A&M, and UNLV, those should all be layups. And then you go to Wake Forest, and then you got your SEC slate. And then you just you got to roll it out for the rest of the game. And you can at least get to a hedge spot with that, because I'm pretty sure they're going to win the first 3. Pretty sure. But it's always fun to bet Vanderbilt over 3.5, and you can get a hedge spot in the last week at least or something. But I always take Vanderbilt over 3.5 wins. Cash last year, they almost made a bowl game. And I actually do think they're an improving program. Like, I actually do think they're getting better under Clark Lee. And they're still not good. They're still not like, I'm still not going to be picking them outright against some of these teams. But I think they're becoming more and more of a respectable football team that can win some games that they shouldn't. And for that reason, I think over 3.5 is one of my favorite bets on this board.
Yes, to echo what you said. The Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama's, you're not really giving Vanderbilt. It's not changed how you look at them. But if you're Missouri or South Carolina or Florida this year, Vanderbilt is you got to get ready for it. I think I really hope they can go to Wake Forest and win. But the UNLV, Alabama A&M, and Hawaii should all be wins. They can creep up on Florida. Go beat Florida again, Vanderbilt. Go beat Florida.
Yeah.
Ole Miss would be interesting, but Alabama and Auburn and South Carolina, there are potential wins there. They hung around a lot last year. We talked about Missouri hanging around. Vanderbilt was the king of just hanging around in these games, low-scoring games. Like, you look in the fourth quarter, you're like, why is it 21-20 and Vanderbilt has the ball right now? There are chances that they can get the win here, get these wins. So I hope they make a bowl, because, like you said, I think Clark Lee's doing great things. And we watched them last year.
I think they're bought in. I think they're bought into Clark Lee, too.
They absolutely are.
I think he can get a lot out of these guys, even if they aren't the most talented group. They still have Will Shepherd, too. By the way, I was praying for Georgia to snag out of the portal. Great receiver.
AJ Swann's a really good quarterback. He improved a lot. Like, I'm
just looking at, like,
guy.
Like, you're basically giving me, okay, so Florida, Hawaii, who's going to be awful, Alabama, A&M, UNLV. Let's say they win those 3. That's the rest of their schedule after that, and you're just giving me that I'm going to get one of those. That's all I need. Come on. Like, I think it's just great value.
Yeah, if you really wanted to get frisky, DraftKings has their SEC wins set at 1.5, and the overs plus 155. So, can they pick off Florida, Auburn, South Carolina, Missouri, 2 of those? I'm not going to bet it, but it would be kind of fun. I like it, man. I like the trajectory for the Doors. So
yeah,
I have not bet this, but it's a kind of a traditional bet that we have to do. So we're pro Vanderbilt on this show. So
we are.
That's what matters.
Except for that one year whenever they canceled homecoming, which was, I guess, 2020. That pissed me off.
Yeah, which sucks. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. If you made it this long, like I said, we're going to be doing the ACC next. We're going to do all of the Power 5 conferences, and then we're going to do some G5 picks. We have some great G5 picks. We talked about a little UTSA. I like South Florida. We got some off-the-wall teams. Some fun tidbits, fun facts about those teams. But the ACC is going to be coming up next. We're going to take we're going to have a short break after that, and then we're going to get to pumping these back out in the middle of August. But yeah, we got some interesting content going. Like you said, we don't steer you wrong on this show. We're always handing out winners.
Never.
Yeah, never. And we'll get it rolling. We'll be back with the ACC later this week.